But let's bring on Christian Toto. Sorry about the glitch before. Christian, you there? There you are. Okay, you look good. Christian Toto is an award-winning journalist, film critic, and podcaster. He's the founder of HollywoodInToto.com, and you can find him on Twitter at HollywoodInToto, T-O, one of the very, very few conservatives covering the movies who actually knows what he's talking about. They always just give the movie beat at all these think tanks. They just give them to some guy who's doing something else and say, well, everybody knows about movies. But you actually, I read your stuff because you actually know about movies. Did you see this piece? I mean, did you see this Disney princess thing?
What's amazing about this particular piece is the projection that's going on. And I think projection is exactly what you see across the liberal landscape. It is them projecting these ideas, these fears, this pretend, boldness, and it's absurd. It, in a way, it reminds me of the Lady Ghostbusters situation where we couldn't have young women become scientists until we had a lady Ghostbuster, and until that point, they were helpless. They just sat there in school thinking, oh, if I only had a lady Ghostbuster to look up to, I could be a scientist too. Yeah. And that's what this reminds me of in an odd way. There's a connective tissue there that's both scary and all too real. It
really is. They go after everyone, even their own daughter. She can't even let her daughter be herself. I mean, her daughter loves this little book, and everything has to be turned into the image of their politics. And eventually they devour their own. I mean, they have this thing, the creators of Game of Thrones, right? I mean, it's got to be one of the most talked about television shows ever written, and they come out and they have a new idea, and you were writing about this at Hollywood in Toto, their brilliant new idea for their new show.
It's going to be the Confederacy is back. The Civil War ended, the South seceded, and slavery never went away. Now, I think it's absurd on its face because, civilization matures and evolves and grows, and slavery would have went away anyway. But listen, even given that construct, they're allowed to make the show because those are the two of the showrunners from Game of Thrones. It's the most popular show in the world. It's like the next Sopranos. And if they aren't allowed to kind of follow their vision, then who is?
But the funny thing about this is they come out with the show, which is it's kind of like that The Man in the High Castle if Hitler won the war. But if Hitler won the war, you'd have had this oppressive regime forcing its ugly, stupid ideas on the world, and that kind of made some sense. But if the Confederacy won the war, just as you say, slavery would have passed away. I mean, there's just simply no way slavery would have endured, except in Muslim countries, of course. But I mean, here in the West, it would have been destroyed. But the thing was, right-wingers immediately reacted to this, rolling their eyes. We immediately said, oh, God, we have to listen to this garbage, and we have to listen to how wonderful Hollywood is because they oppose slavery, as if everybody doesn't. But what got me is they were attacked from the left. They were attacked by their own people.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I have yet to hear one either HBO star or even just like celebrities say, "Hey, let these artists have their voice, share their story, and we can go from there."
What was their beef?
What's amazing is that the conservatives right now are on the forefront of the free speech movement, and it's liberals who are way in the back. Like, when I was a kid playing dodgeball and I couldn't face the heavy artillery, I hung in the back. That's what the liberals are these days. They're either deathly quiet or they're just even defending it or making excuses for it. It's a very sad state of affairs.
It is. What was their beef with the Confederacy? I mean, what was their problem with the story?
The problem is that it will show modern slavery, black people in 2017 being enslaved in some capacity, and that image is inappropriate. And also those particular showrunners, the show's creators, are white. So they wouldn't be able to grasp that slavery is dehumanizing and awful. I mean, that's insulting on its face. They are so
racist. I mean, they boil down everything to race. And they did that, but it's all about what's allowed. Nothing is allowed. They don't, we basically say everything's allowed, but we're going to criticize it. But they say, right. they did this to our pal Dennis Prager, right? He was going to, what was this? He was going to conduct an orchestra, or he is going to?
He's going to later this month. He's going to be at the Santa Monica Symphony, I believe is the full title. It's a one-day gig. Listen, he's not a master musician, but obviously he knows his stuff. They invited him to be a conductor, and now there's a movement by some in the orchestra and some in the community to get him out because he's a bigot and a hate monger. Now, of all the voices on conservative talk radio across the country, he's often the most genteel.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, no, he is, and he's obviously a deeply, deeply religious guy with a lot of his basis of thought is based in the Old Testament, and the last thing he is a bigot or a hate monger of any kind. So let's talk about the summer pictures. Let's talk about the summer lineup. First of all, their big film, the Al Gore film. The Al Gore sequel to An Inconvenient Truth. that didn't actually tear there wasn't a lot of warming at the box office for that, was there? It kind of died.
It did okay.
Oh,
I have to say, though I don't agree with a lot of it, I think it really did affect the conversation on climate change. And from that perspective, there have been worse reasons to make a sequel. Having said that, even some liberal critics are saying, oh, this is just a love letter to Al Gore. His ego is so big he can barely fit on the screen. So while the reviews are mostly fawning like you'd expect and hyper uncritical and not skeptical, at least some of them are saying, you know what, this is really kind of an ego piece, and that's kind of embarrassing.
That is embarrassing. And did anything that he said in that first film, did any of his predictions come true? I mean, I remember he said that New York was going to be underwater, and then he points out that during the storm Sandy, there was some water downtown, but that's not the same as New York being underwater because of the sea
Not even
levels.
close. What amazes me about the film is that if they came out and said, you know what, some of our predictions have been wrong, but we still feel, based on the science, based on the data, that this is important information, they can't do that. They can't admit anything, and they can't stop calling deniers and making them actually worse comparisons. There's a moment in the film late in the movie where they talk about there was a terrorist attack in Paris, and basically they weaponized that particular attack to talk about climate change. It's the most tone-deaf moment of any film I've seen in quite some time.
What's the connection? I mean, between the terrorists and
well, I've seen the movie and I still can't tell you, but they do segue a bit awkwardly from climate change to terrorism back to climate change, and it's about how we need to fight back against terrorism with our values. That was part of the conversation.
I thought it was maybe that the Middle East is so hot now they're just getting cranky. That's like
oh, they talk about how climate change caused part of the Syrian crisis, by the way.
I heard him talk about this. Yes, the migration and all that stuff. So what about the rest? I have actually seen a pretty good. I'm not a big summer picture guy, but I've seen a fairly good amount. What's the worst social justice aside from the Al Gore film? What is the worst left-wing big picture of the summer, do you think?
I don't know if this has been a preponderance of SJW movies, but Spider-Man Homecoming stopped cold multiple times to have some sort of woke moments. And I thought that was really ill-advised, to say the very least. But the movie itself is kind of charming and light and breezy, so you can kind of accept it. I have to say, from a moviegoer point of view, if I ever have to watch Transformers The Last Night again, I need to have some sort of cyanide pill clenched between my teeth just to make sure I don't watch the whole thing. It was beyond awful.
I turned on Stephen King's The Mist, a novella that I liked very much, and I like Stephen King very much. And it starts out in the first two scenes, or the second and third scene. There's an opening violent scene, but it starts out lecturing us on transgenderism and gay rights and how everybody's. And I'm very easygoing about people's sex lives. I don't care, but I don't want to be lectured at when I'm turning on to watch monsters rip people apart. And I turned it off. I just found it offensive that they were in my face like that.
It's bad storytelling 101, and even if you agree with it, it's bad storytelling 101. But that's where we are. And I think it's often more in television shows these days where the lecturing is really in your face. I think movies, the budgets are bigger and they know they can't anger people as aggressively as TV often does.
Interesting.
So I think that they kind of smooth out some of the edges at times.
I saw the War for the Planet of the Apes, which I thought was unbelievable in terms of its technology, but was it me? I mean, I found that kind of offensive, like the scene where they played the national anthem while they're torturing the apes and all this stuff. And I know Alpha and Omega is the name of a bomb, but it also, of course, is from the Gospels, from the Bible. It just seemed aggressively anti-American.
Well, wasn't the burning American flag kind of a subtle metaphor for things?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what gave it away. And also, the other thing I got to say, Christian, is Christian Toto from HollywoodInToto.com, which you really should go to if you want to see intelligent conversation about show business and movies from the right. The other thing is every movie has a wall in it, and the wall is bad. So, I mean, in Planet of the Apes, it was like, oh, it's crazy, he's building a wall. I thought an army is coming, bearing down on their position, build a wall, right? And then the Blade Runner, the new Blade Runner thing looks like it's got a wall. It's, people build walls and all this. I mean,
I think maybe in 2 years, when all the films in production now come to fruition, it could be wall sequels, wall franchises, wall movies. I mean, new walls, old walls.
Everything we know.
This is just warming up.
So what's the best movie you've seen this summer?
I liked Wonder Woman a lot. I think it captures something that the original Superman did. It had a sense of humor and joy that I loved, even though the sort of the last third gets a little bit weak. I also liked Baby Driver a lot. I think that was fun. It had a good use of music, and it had a sweet love story kind of mixed in with all the action and mayhem. And I think that's pretty rare these days. The rom-com is essentially dead. Hollywood has left it behind. They can't even crack the code about how to show people falling in love in movies anymore.
Right.
So I think the fact that this had a sweet little love story mixed in was actually kind of refreshing.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, I saw the Beauty and the Beast live action film, which I thought was actually pretty good. But one of the worst things about it is I just thought Emma Watson, right? That's she's the star. I just thought she couldn't let go enough to play a woman falling in love. She couldn't look soft enough and kind of swept away enough. And it just kind of was a sore point in the middle of the picture. What about Dunkirk? Did you like that?
I didn't like it as much as my fellow critics. I feel like it was more technique and style than substance, and I never connected with these characters. Even Mark Rylance, who has the most emotional arcs in the story, it just didn't work. And I have to say, I don't know whether I'm just getting old, but I couldn't hear half the dialogue between the sounds of war and the accents. I'm looking forward to actually watching it again on the small screen and putting on the closed captioning, because I missed a lot of it.
I had the same feeling. I liked the movie. I of course admired the technique, but I had the same. There were no relationships in it. How can there be an emotional arc when nobody has a relationship with anything but with the battle? There are no people. Only the two kids have a relationship, and I thought that was a real problem with it. And I had a problem hearing the pilots over the engines. I mean, that was very tough.
Yeah, and in 10 years we're going to be talking about Hacksaw Ridge, I think, a lot more than Dunkirk.
Wow,
that's what I think.
Interesting. So what are you looking forward to? Anything good upcoming?
Oh gosh, this time of year is really rough. But, I think things turn around in September, October, get some of the Oscar bait movies coming soon. So we shall see. It's Lucky Logan is coming out in a few weeks. It's a new Steven Soderbergh film, which is he's always got interesting things to say. And I just saw the trailer for the new Death Wish, which is angering social justice warriors in record form.
Poor social
Bruce Willis, classic story. We'll see what they do with it.
Good. All right. Well, we'll have you back when the new movies come out. Christian Toto from Hollywood in Toto. It's always good to talk to you.
Thanks so much.
I notice I shout at people when they're on Skype, like the microphone won't carry my voice. It's like, all right.